Oh, okay. Why not? No.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. We're about to get started. So this is the return of our Labrador Institute speaker series. We've been on hiatus for the summer. This is a new thing for us. We haven't invited any political candidates in the past, and we'll see how this goes with our three federal candidates. And if that goes well, maybe we'll try it for our provincial candidates as well. And so the idea was just to give all three of the federal candidates an opportunity to come in and present their platform that they're running on. And then at the end of that, we'll take some questions as well, if people have questions. And I'll just ask that the questions stick to the platform that's been presented tonight. So without further ado, our speaker tonight is Peter Panashaway, the candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada. And we all are familiar with Peter. He's been our MP before, and he's vying for that position again. So without further ado, Mr. Panashaway. Yeah, I can get you a little table if you want one. Please, just give me 1 second. You're welcome.
Anyway, I'll introduce myself. As you know, my name is Peter Panashaway. I am the candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada. I am married to Mary Ann Panashaway. We have 4 children. We have 6 grandchildren. So we're very fortunate. We are never bored with our grandkids. And I guess to start off, I just wanted to make a presentation. Hopefully it will be short and interesting, and I'll take questions after my presentation. First of all, I'd like to thank the university for putting on this show that allows us for candidates to make our point of views heard. So the question is, what is this election about? For me, I'm not so much worried about what's happening outside of Labrador, as you've seen me when I was the Minister of Labrador, Newfoundland and Labrador. I focused on Labrador, and that's where I was elected from, and that's where my constituents are. So the question I look at Labrador and I say, okay, what's our needs? The population of Labrador is only 30,000 people. The land mass is like close to 300,000 square miles. It's a huge land mass. So Labrador is the 3rd largest riding in the country, and we're the smallest population of all the ridings. So we're very unique. We're a very unique position, and I think we need to be cognizant of that, and accordingly, play our role to make sure that our interests are looked after. Now, Muskrat Falls is a huge project. It started off as being $6.3 billion project. It's going into another 10% of the cost I'm hearing, but and it's created obviously a huge economic boom for Labrador, and there's a lot of Labradorians working, and I think it's good. I supported the project right from get-go, and I've never. I'm not one of those people that says I support the project on the condition of. I support the project. As a matter of fact, when I was the Grand Chief of the Nation, I've done 2 of these projects. The first one was under the Liberals with Roger Grimes, and that didn't go anywhere, even though we had concluded an agreement. And the second one was with Danny Williams, and this is what's there now. And so it's interesting. when we signed the agreements with when the Indonesians signed the agreements with the province and the feds and what's known as Josh Bedavin Agreement. He was summoned to attend on behalf of Canada to sign the agreement in Natwashish. It was funny because my signature was on one page of the Innu side of the document, and I was signing on behalf of government. So I was, so I tell people, I said, 100 years from now, kids are going to look at this agreement and say, his signature is on both sides. So it'll be an interesting discussion. Yeah, what happened was John Duncan was supposed to go out and sign the document, but he took sick that day, and so I ended up going. And with regards to Muskrat Falls, I remember I received a call from Ed Martin on November 28th, I think it was, and he was all in a panic because they were having problems getting the loan guarantee signed off. And of course, it's this project would not proceed without the loan guarantee. It's too big for the province. So I said to Ed, I said, leave it with me for 24 hours and I'll get to work on it. And so this was Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And 24 hours later, 6 o'clock on Thursday, we had it done. And 3 hours later, it was approved by Nova Scotia and the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And so we were on the flight the next day to Goose Bay to sign the loan guarantee terms and conditions of the agreement. So, so I'm very proud of that because it's a huge project, and it's probably one of the biggest projects I'll ever be involved with, and having a signature too, or involvement with. And so I'm very pleased with that. And the thing I guess that I want to remind people is that Muskrat Falls will end in 2017, and now they're saying 2018. So that's a couple of years from now. So the question then becomes, in 2 years, most of the people that are working on the site, most of the people that are there will be heading back to wherever they're from, whether they're from Newfoundland, Ontario, and other places. And the people from Labrador will be laid off. And the thing is that most people are not talking about is that this project ends in 2018. There'll be something like 38 people running the maintenance of Muskrat Falls. And so the question becomes like, if we don't have, once the project is done, and Ed Martin was on the other day and he was talking about Gull Island, and he was saying that they won't be ready until 2025, which means there's an 8-year span of which there will not be a huge resource development in Labrador. So most of the people that are there now will be unemployed, and the problem with that is that there isn't people are being paid huge salaries and wages, and it's going to have a huge impact on the people that are working there, because they're not going to want to go back to the work that they did at say Tim Hortons or the service sector in Goose Bay or other places. It's going to have a huge impact on the people themselves. Now, having said that, with Muskrat Falls being winding down in a couple of years, IOC is not doing very well. And I'm told, by the experts, I've talked to a few, there doesn't seem to be a sign that the price of ore will rebound until 10 years, which means that next year, within the next 52 weeks, it's going to be very important for IOC. What are they going to do? They're going to be laying off people. How will they survive until the next turnaround? So there's two big projects that will be winding down, could potentially be winding down next year, and that's going to have a huge impact on Labrador. And you have to keep in mind what I said earlier. There's only 30,000 people in Labrador. So any huge layoffs like that's going to have a huge impact on the population, but in particular to the young people. Because as you know, young people are working on these projects, but also have returned from other places where they worked, and they're looking to stay in Labrador. So there's a period of which there's going to be a concern. And then you have 5-wing. Now, 5-wing is something that I've worked very hard while I was in government, and I was very close to getting a 10-year agreement, and but I didn't. Was unable to have it signed, and then when I lost the election in 2013, it disappeared. But I managed to convince people that it needed to be extended for a couple years until we could figure out what the next steps were. So right now, the agreement on 5-wing will expire in 6 months, March of 2016, and hopefully it will continue. And I am of the view that I'm in a good position to ensure that we have an extension to the 5-wing agreement. And I think I would be in a better position to deliver that, because I think it's quite clear it's going to be a conservative government in the next election. And I think because I know the people I work with, I know all the cabinet ministers, I know how the system works, I'm in a very good position to deliver for Labrador. Now, it's I've made it known that it makes a lot of difference being on the government side. It's amazing what you can accomplish, particularly if you are able to work with the cabinet ministers who know the system, work the system. For example, as I've said, I was able to deliver a $6.3 billion loan guarantee for Muskrat Falls, which is a huge benefit for Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. And another thing that people would not know or would not have heard about is a project Alderon and Labrador Iron Mines, and there's a couple other smaller companies that were desperately looking to ship their ore from Lab West to Sept-Îles. And of course, what happened was IOC would not agree to have them use their dock, because that's theirs, and they're not interested in having other companies use their dock. So there was a proposal on the table. They were prepared to put money on the table to build a new multi-user dock for that region, which they all could use, and they were looking for $55 million as a federal contribution. So of course they all came to me because I was the regional minister for Labrador, and I was in good position to make that argument. So I took it on, and after several weeks, I had the $55 million required to build the $220 million multi-user dock. And so Denny LaBelle and myself, after we had all the cabinet approvals, flew to Sept-Îles, and along with the other mining companies, we signed an agreement for the total package was worth $220 million, and the federal share was $55 million. And that project was just completed this spring. So now there's a facility, there's a dock waiting to be used as soon as the iron ore prices return. So that was something that I was able to deliver. Now, I mentioned that because I think that in the event of IOC looking to recover some of the cost, or to keep the cost in line with what they can afford or prepared to spend for the next few years while they wait out the downturn, I think the federal government has a responsibility to find a way to help contribute towards the cost of IOC. And that's where I'd like to take on that responsibility and find a way to help. And obviously, as I've said, it's it's useful and beneficial to be on the government side to be able to deliver these things. So with those, two items of Muskrat Falls, of course, 5 Wing, and I always see that it's going to have a huge impact on Labrador if we if all 3 projects fail and aren't able to rebound. So I'm very concerned about that. So what I'm proposing, given that that there's potentially an 8-year period where potentially there would not be a resource economic development. What I'm proposing is to start looking at ways to get ready for the next phase. So what I proposed was building a road from Goose Bay to the north coast, and because of my accomplishments, I know I can raise that money and deliver that type of money. I know, for example, there is a federal contribution that was made, $300 million for a road between Inuvik and Tuktoyaktuk. And it's expensive out there because it's of the permafrost. So there's a special way of working with roads up in the areas where there's permafrost. And it's very expensive. So my thinking is that if we can raise $300 million for a road for the North Coast, then that should make a significant dent, towards Nain. So that's how I see it. And with having a road, up to the North Coast, I think it solves many problems. Of course, the Innu Nation and the Nunetsewe government would have to be consulted, and other players, other people, all the stakeholders. But having a road up to the North Coast solves many problems. It helps bring down the cost for food, transportation, and electricity would follow, obviously, and fiber optic. But you need the road first in order to have these other fiber optic and transmission for electricity for the homes. I remember in 2011 campaign, I was going door to door in Nain, and this lady talked to me about transportation services, and she was explaining to me that a woman that is due or pregnant in Nain has to travel to Goose Bay 4 weeks early to get to Goose Bay, and that's 2 weeks earlier than the other communities, and that's because of any emergency that could arise. So the doctors, I guess, prefer to have the people in Nain travel 2 weeks earlier than the other communities on the North Coast. And she thought that was very unfair because she's away from her family, from her kids, from her community, and she didn't think that was right. So I always remember that story, and obviously one of the solutions that I thought is to find a way to build an airstrip up in out Nain. And as a matter of fact, I started on that project because I started meeting with all the cabinet ministers that would be required, for example, the transportation minister and the province, and they agreed to do a study to do some wind analysis in Nain to get a sense as to where would be the best place to build an airstrip if they were to build one. And so that was a huge commitment that I got from the ministers and the province. And of course, since I left, I've obviously there's no one to carry the ball or to lobby for the project, because if you're not there, then there's always competition for money. There's for projects. So as you know, if you're in the opposition or in the third party, you don't have a say of what happens in cabinet or in government. Another project that obviously we all know how important internet is to all of our families, to all of our children. But my 10-year-old grandson, he gets very upset when the internet is down. And so it's very important, obviously, and it's important for the economy, it's important for the people that are working on the internet, but it's also important for students and other people. And that's why I think there's money there for infrastructure for fiber optic. And I think it's important that I'd be sent to Ottawa to lobby for that money to run a fiber optic line from Goose Bay to South Coast and over to Newfoundland. When we built I remember I had a phone call from before they built the fiber optic line from Labrador City to Goose Bay. I had a phone call from Ed Martin, and he was explaining to me that they were running a line from Labrador City to Muskrat Falls, but that was it. And if we wanted the line to continue to Goose Bay, we would need to make a federal contribution. And I think the project was worth something like $23 million, I think it was. And both province and the feds contributed a couple $1 million each. And so they continued to run the line from Muskrat Falls to Goose Bay. And then I lobbied for additional $2 million to run it to Northwest River. And so that's why we have the fiber optic line to Northwest River. And but the original plan was to run the fiber optic line from Lab City to Goose Bay down the south coast, which would give you the circular loop. Because if there was ever a forest fire, for example, on the Quebec side, all of us would be down with our internet, because there's just one line going out of Labrador. But if you had a loop that goes to the south coast and to Newfoundland, then if there was ever a fire in Quebec, it wouldn't matter. We'd still have a connection to the south coast, through south coast. So that's something that I think is very important, to be able to connect all of Labrador. And as I've said, it's important that we have the roads as well up to North Coast, but then other, such as the fiber optic and transmission lines, or the electricity line would be able to run up North Coast. That's also very important. And I don't have to explain to you, I guess, getting back on the road, how important the roads are and the benefits of the road. I've been watching my Facebook and responding to some of the issues. And there are people on the line that have no sense of or no vision. They think what we have is what we should have. There's no forward thought. There's no, people don't have any big ideas. Whereas those of you that know me, I've accomplished many things in my short life. I was the Grand Chief of Innu Nation, and I've accomplished relocation for Natwashish along with other leadership. I've accomplished Voices Bay, Muskrat Falls, redress on the Upper Churchill for the Innu, and all the programs and services for our community. And it hasn't been easy. I won't. I'd be lying to you if I said it was easy. Because those of you remember in 1990, when I got elected, I was 26 years old. And prior to 1990, our community, our leadership was arguing for decolonization from Newfoundland, from Canada. The leadership wanted their own land. We were arguing that we should be left alone. The settlers should move away. And in 1990, I said, that's not reasonable. That's not practical. That's not sensible. We need to integrate. We need to sit down with others. And so when I was elected in 1990, I moved the direction of the organization in a different direction. I sat down with governments, both federal and provincial, and then I sat down with the industry. And that allowed us to get involved or to start accessing programs and services for our community. I remember in 1990, when I first got elected, I had a visit from from a couple of, 3 gentlemen from the old Davis line, or was known as Davis line. It was George Rich, Cody Poker, and Mark Newey. They said, we have a lot of problems in Davis line. We don't have any running water. Our houses are falling apart. The land is moving an inch a year. So that tears the community apart because it was built on a slope, on a hill, the community, and there's no room to expand. And so they said, okay, what are we going to do? I said, why don't we do what other people do when they have problems? Let's have a conference. So we organized a conference amongst the Innu Nation and the community of Davis line. We sent out a whole bunch of letters to anyone we could think of. And so we got a few people to come to the meeting. That was Bill Rumpke was in opposition at the time, so he showed up to our meeting. Harold Marshall showed up for the province, and all the provincial workers. So we sat down and we all talked about the condition of Davis line. And it was very hard at the beginning to believe that that we could raise enough money to move the whole community, but we kept at it, and then other things started piling on. There was other issues like gas sniffing. People were interested in the story. As soon as CNN came on the scene, and London Telegraph, I think it was, it changed everything. Suddenly, like, Davison is on the news. And suddenly we were getting phone calls from the ministers looking to have a meeting to try to see if we can resolve the issues. And I remember all the government officials saying, let's have one more study. But I said, we already have 32 studies saying the community, needs to be found another location or something else to help the water situation. But they insisted one more study, but we said, we have to have relocation as a part of the terms of reference. No, not going to be on. We just have to see how we can help you in Davis line. They were looking at different options. They were even talking about bringing in a ship which would supply water for Davis line for the winter. All kinds of ridiculous ideas. And then we went to see John Crosby, who was the regional minister at the time. So we sat down with him in Ottawa and we said, John, we're having this one final study for Davis line. We want relocation as part of the terms of reference so that we don't have to do any more studies. What they're proposing, is to do the study, and then we have another study if it indicated they couldn't find a solution within the community. And so he said, look, let's have one more study, and relocation is going to be part of the terms of reference. And the contract went to Terpstra Engineering. He did all the analysis, all the studies, and the report came back and they said, there's not enough water in Davis line, there's no room to expand, and you can't build a new infrastructure on a community that's slipping an inch a year. And there we had a report that said the community had to be relocated. Out of that came the final agreements to move the community. And that was in the final analysis was worth $150 million. So when I hear people having these comments about one guy said, yes, we'll have a road to North Coast, but it won't be in my lifetime. And I say to myself, just stop and think big and start believing in yourself and start believing in Labrador. And that's what we need to do. We need to start believing in Labrador, start building the infrastructure. Look at the stuff that I've accomplished in the 2 years that I was there. I was able to accomplish that because I believed in myself, I believed in people, I believed in Labrador, and I was there for Labrador. You all know I was there for, because Newfoundland just about tore me apart, because I was always for Labrador. The money was flowing to Labrador. I delivered for Labrador. And as a matter of fact, I remember a provincial cabinet minister was very upset with me because I was just flowing the money to Labrador. He said, I don't have to remind you, he said, Labrador is only 5% of the population of the province. And I said, yes, but look at all the infrastructure and requirements in Labrador that we need to catch up with. We don't have roads, we don't have electricity up the North Coast. We badly need those infrastructure. And that's the argument that I've always made. And even in the, in the meetings that I attended in Ottawa, it's always about Labrador. And that's when when you hear me say, when you hear me say I'm a partisan, that's what I mean. I'm partisan for Labrador, because I don't think we've ever had an MP that went to Ottawa to defend the interest of Labradorians, all Labradorians. And that's why I believe that I can deliver for Labrador, because I was there for my constituents. Some people think I'm a career politician. Really, I'm not. I'm a lobbyist. I'm an advocate. I'm not interested in going to Ottawa to sit in the opposition and make a career out of that. Just not interested. I'm interested in doing good for Labrador. And I think it's come very clear to me and others that it is going to be a conservative government. And that's why, to me, it makes more sense to send me back to Ottawa and start working for Labrador, as I have in the 2 years that I was there. And I think I finished my presentation, and if there's any questions, I'll certainly entertain to answer those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Panashway. So we'll take a few minutes for any questions now. If anybody has questions for Mr. Panashway, he's kindly agreed to stick around and answer a few questions. I'll just remind everybody that we are streaming this onto YouTube. So just keep in mind that your questions and your language is being broadcast over the internet. So and it'll be archived on the LI webpage as well. So if anybody, anybody who wasn't able to make it tonight, you can actually tell them where they can find it. They'll be able to watch it in the future up until the election comes around. So I'll let you answer your questions.
Mr. Panashway, you talked about the $5 billion loan guarantee on the project, Muskrat Falls. Of course, near and dear to my heart in an opposite way that it's near and dear to yours. It's now at $8.5 billion, and that was over a year ago. It is only $1.5 billion away from being double what that loan guarantee was. The loan guarantee is what was needed for the province to go ahead. And you said it was because the province couldn't handle it.
Well,
we're now going to have $5 billion more, most likely, and the ratepayers and the taxpayers of this province are going to pay for that with our rates. How did the federal loan guarantee, in this case, help the province?
Well, the province needed the loan guarantee because they couldn't carry that kind of debt. It's a huge, obviously. You have to remember, Newfoundland has a budget, I think, of $11 billion. This project was worth $6.3 billion at the time. And for them to take on that kind of debt is, it's almost impossible, but I'm sure, they would say otherwise, but it's a huge debt. And the value of because of the interest rates at the time, and if the loan is guaranteed by the federal government, it has a huge impact on the interest rates. The value of the loan guarantee is almost $1 billion to the province, Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, because of just the interest rates. And so it is a huge.
But my point is that if it's going to go to a $10 billion project, which is likely to do, the interest rate will not be the low interest rate of the $5 billion, okay? So the province is going to take the $5 billion over what the first 5 billion, and we're gonna pay probably quite a bit higher interest rate. Plus, we have to pay for the 5 billion and the 5 billion before that.
Just keep in mind that the loan guarantee is based on 6.3. Should the project go bankrupt, that's when that 6.3 kicks in. It doesn't kick in any time earlier, right? It's only when the project fails. Because someone is borrowing the money, the additional money, and the province is doing it.
I understand that. It's about the interest is the reason why
No,
the federal government.
It's about the $6.3 billion that the Newfoundland is borrowing. What Canada is saying, we're going to guarantee that 6.3, right? In addition, it's worth almost $1 billion to both Nova Scotia and Newfoundland because of the interest rates and the assurance that the federal government is giving. But should the project go bankrupt, that's what it guarantees, 6.3. The rest is taken on by.
Well, 5 billion for Newfoundland and 1.3 billion for the Maritimes, right? For the maritime part, the Nova Scotia part. My question is, how did this loan guarantee, if this project goes to 10 billion, how did this loan guarantee help us?
It helped you on the 6.3 billion, right? You can only, the federal government, that's the deal that was made in November of 2012. Federal government said, you're proposing to build a project that's worth $6.3 billion. We're going to guarantee 6.3. Any overruns, over budget,
It's your problem,
it's your problem, right?
which is my point.
Right. And the other point most people don't understand is that the project is incurred or paid for by the ratepayers, those people that use it. For example, if you think that Labrador is paying for the cost, it's not, because we're on a different grid. We're on the Churchill Falls project.
Did you know, in fact, that the experts who are advising Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, the experts from the United States, have actually suggested that once the grid is hooked to Labrador, that Labrador should pay the same as Newfoundland? That's in the documents from the Public Utilities Board.
Well, they may have, but that's the agreement is that whoever uses Muskrat Falls is the one that pays.
Is that written somewhere, Mr. Panashway?
It is.
Where can I find that?
Well, I assume you'd have to find the document and find it in the documents that they negotiated. I don't have it with me.
Yeah, it's not in the loan guarantee documents. I've read that
No, it wouldn't be.
cover to cover.
It wouldn't be in the loan guarantee because the federal government only covered the $6.3 billion. Had nothing else to do, had nothing else to do with it. But I'm sure if you contact Ed Martin, he'll give you that information.
Well, I'm sure he will.
Yeah. I'm sure
Like he's given us all the other information we asked for.
You mentioned road. Northwest River Council has talked about a railroad rather than a road to go from Lab City to Nain, with spurs off to the communities. Yes, it's expensive, but perhaps the mining companies would also welcome that. And it might be more usable all time of year. And it might be a tourist attraction. And it's probably less, it's more environmentally favorable. I wondered if you'd heard any talk of that.
I can't comment on that because I don't know anything about railways. And the only, I guess, public information that I have is been reviewing is the roads. And to me, if that makes more, it's more logical to build a road to the North Coast. Because it's just all kinds of benefits. Right? For example, there's the province is looking to build something like $1.5 billion to build 2 ferries for South Coast and North Coast. And I mean, they dropped that idea, it's too expensive. But just think about this now, they would have to be provincially involved anyhow because these kind of projects are on a 50-50 basis. So if the project costs, $300 million, the feds will bring in 150, the province will put in the other 150. And it's a good big saving for them.
And the companies, mining companies.
And the mining companies would have to make a contribution as well, because they would use it.
Yeah.
And after that, you would have the transmission lines as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of benefits.
Yeah.
That I almost lost my question.
Oh,
But no, I haven't lost it. It'll come back.
Yeah.
What is would the federal contribution be to the road system going north? I know we need it. I absolutely do. And I was really busted up a bit when I heard that the people up north didn't want it. I thought, well, but I know the ground is changing for them because the kids are going and they got no way to come back. They can't even visit because
Yeah.
they can't fly in on that day or whatever. So what is the contribution of our infrastructure and the feds? What's the difference? I've never known that
what is the contribution?
the feds would put into a road. I really have no faith in what the French government would put in there. I don't.
Normally these type of projects are on 50-50 basis. For example, the Labrador transmission highway system, they're all cost shared. And the same thing would apply on the north coast. It would be 50-50.
So they're busted now, and they'll be busted worse trying to pay for Muscat Falls. So that road system is way far away, obviously.
Well, this is where I think. I think if once you bring people together and convince that this is the right thing to do, it's amazing how things are gonna how things happen, right?
Yeah,
The same way, for example, when we first talked about relocation of Davidson to Nantwashish, people said it's too expensive. It's not practical. Let's find something else. If you keep at it and
I take your point on vision because we're very, very short on vision.
Right.
The fact that this room is not filled tonight just bothers me no end. I mean, you should be hammered down or pushed up, whatever. You should be a lot busier than you are with this little tiny group. So that's really discouraging. But yeah, the vision to put that road up there, about 50-50. Is there anywhere in the world we can pull ourselves away from the anchor that is the province when Labrador really contributes a lot more and that island itself can contribute to this, whatever this union is. And don't you think too that Labrador should be a partner in this provincial so-called province thing rather than just being an appendage? I mean, after all, look what we put into it. That's just not fair.
well, that's a point of view and a point of view that needs to be obviously would need to be acknowledged. But what I do notice is that the contributions that Labrador makes, and we belong to a province and of Newfoundland and Labrador, and we don't have a road to the north coast. Like, we're the only region of Newfoundland and Labrador that doesn't have roads. You can go to Newfoundland and drive anywhere. There's roads everywhere, right? So what I'm offering you is, I'm saying I'm prepared to take this on, and I'm very confident that I can do this. If people want it, is to build a road to the north coast. I'm confident of that. And if you had asked me, 20 years ago, I would have said, no, never going to happen. But I'm in a different place, a different experience. I know I can accomplish it.
So what
Do you know in 2012, a population of 30,000 people, an MP, a cabinet minister, I delivered more for my region than any other riding in all of Canada. If you added up all the values of the roads, the fisheries, the airports, the loan guarantee, if you added up all the amounts, even I was competing with the big regions of the big cities.
So, yeah.
So it's impressive.
I hear where you'll be running on that, because that is impressive. But for us, I think those few of us, and we're damn few, obviously, we don't know, because a lot of people won't come out.
Yeah.
You see, they're on the losing side. The environment is still very important, because
Very much
hunting and fishing, and the fact that we're going to, our fish is going to be jeopardized because of the methyl mercury downstream, that's just a killer.
Yeah.
What basically you said about that when you put this project up there is that it doesn't matter. People don't have to eat fish, so that's a bothersome part.
Yeah.
How would you try to pull back the environmental aspect of this? not only this, but any other impact that the loss of the environment means to us, because the trees that they've laid down over there is horrendous. And apparently we have to ask for more trees to be cut away, because those are the ones going to be swamped, to cut down that methyl mercury level. So how would you, in all of this, with your pushing the economics, and I see we all have to, how would you mitigate that with the environment?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's an environmental assessment, and they take into consideration of all the issues that are being raised. They try to find mitigated measures on projects, mega projects that come forward. And obviously, that's a very difficult question to answer, because what's fair and what's right for one person may not be the same for other. I always remember a story that my grandfather told me. He said things are changing, and changing very quickly. When we pass, you young people are not going to be going back to the land the way we did. So you better find a place for yourselves in the new world, as he would call it. And I always remember that story. So that's why for me, like that, I've always tried to find a place for the Inuit people in this society. Now I'm playing on a bigger field and a bigger role for a larger audience. I'm trying to do the same. I'm trying to find a place for Labradorians and their future, and trying to build an infrastructure, economic development, so that young people can remain home and be home. And I hear that on the street, right? That people don't want to be moving back to Alberta or other places. For example, just what happens here in the next couple of years. You're going to start seeing, your children, grandchildren start moving to Halifax. Why? Because there's thousands of jobs there. There's a $35 billion that's being spent there for the next 30 years. And they're just asking for workers. They're desperately looking for workers. And what they've said is that we're not paying for you to go home. We want you to stay in Halifax. So that means the workers, the children, your grandchildren, your children that move out of here are not coming back, because they're going to be in the shipyard. So that's it's that kind of consideration that has to be made. We need to start thinking big. We need to find a way to grow our communities.
Again, are we big enough to destroy the universe we're in?
We're only 30,000 people.
With that?
We're only 30,000 people in Labrador, right?
I'm talking about the environment in a general sense. Now, yes, there's only 30,000. So what you're saying is we are totally expendable? No.
No, that's not what I'm saying. We have to look after ourselves. There's 30,000
So
people.
how do we do that? We're trying to protect our environment and the industry side by side. How do we do that?
Wow. I mean, I think it's important that we find a way to build up our economies in consideration for the land and the animals that live in the environment. But I mean, we can't do without the economy. We need jobs. We need people to pay taxes so we can have all the infrastructure and all the services and amenities that we have. We need to drive the economy. That's important.
Go ahead. That's a circular argument. You go around forever.
Maybe Jim, you have one?
Yeah. Peter, you mentioned the chance of an 8-year downturn.
Yes.
Yeah, and we know what you were talking about, Muskrat Falls and the iron ore may go down. Five Green could become mothball. Providing you're elected and the Conservatives go back in Ottawa, is there some kind of a plan to get us, the people of Labrador, even me, an old gray hair guy, and the younger people over that 8-year hump? Or have we got to depend on our old age pension, and the young people, do they have to go to Halifax? What can we do?
Well,
what do you plan for us to do here?
This is what I'm proposing. I'm proposing that we use the 8 years when there's going to be a downturn. When Muskrat Falls ends, and should the IOC not work favorable the way we would like, we need to build up our infrastructure. We need to build roads. We need to because the economy is going to return. IOC prices will rebound. but it's just that period that we need to get through. So we need to build infrastructure. And that's what I want to be able to argue on, say, I want to build infrastructure, fiber optic to the south coast, build roads to the north coast. And I'm pretty confident that, that I can build up 5-wing. And I'm also very confident that I can, help with IOC and making sure that government is, is at the table should there be a downturn. Because we just got to get through that period where it's going to be challenging.
One thing I haven't heard was the candidates, and even too much nationwide in the campaigns, is about any concentration or interest in building agriculture in Canada and in this province. Like, it's an echo, and I'm involved in that and I'm interested in it. Why is that? Why don't I hear talk about building the #1 industry, that we use 3 times a day? The farmers grow everything we eat. And,
I'd be lying to you if I said I know the subject matter, because I don't. But I can only learn from you. If that's important to you, and if you think something that I should be working towards, if there's a way of doing it, by all means. It's the same thing, for example, when the first time I got elected in 2011, I didn't understand my own influence, because being a cabinet minister was new to me as well, right? And the town of Happy Valley Goose Bay called me up and they said, we've been trying to find money for wastewater management for the town of Happy Valley Goose Bay. We're having problems. Let me call a few people. I called Denis LaBelle, who I didn't know at the time, who ended up becoming a very good friend of mine. And I called him up and I said, Denis, I have this problem. The town of Happy Valley Goose Bay is dumping the raw sewage into the Churchill River. And they're looking to propose a wastewater management system, but they're short on funds. So I need that money, what's known as gas tax, to be flexible. He said, Peter, let me get back to you. Within 24 hours, he called me back and he said, I'm sending deputy ministers to St. John's. You tell your friends to go to St. John's, and 1 week was sorted out. Within a few days, it was settled. They were able to start the project. Now it's working perfectly. Okay? So when you ask me that question, I don't know, but if you share with me what you know, and there's a way we can make it work, I'll make it happen. Okay?
good. That sounds good. Yep.
I have one question from somebody that's watching online. If you don't mind taking that, I'll read that out, and that'll be our last question, maybe.
Sure.
So this person's asking, what is your point of view, or what will you do in light of the social issues and to address social issues in Labrador, such as poverty, housing, alcoholism, high cost of living, food security, the realities of trauma-rooted issues associated with high suicide rates, and those sort of social issues? From what can you as an elected member and the federal government do to start to address some of those issues in Labrador?
Well, social issues are dealt with in the two departments. If you're an Aboriginal under Inuit or Innu, it's handled by the by federal government, either Indian Affairs and Health Canada. If you're under the other, then it's dealt with by the province. And those policies generally, they're different. And so it depends on who's asking that question. If it's an Aboriginal community, obviously there's a lot more that Canada can contribute and help. And I do recognize that we need to do more. And that's the nice thing about being in government and being in cabinet, is that you're there while these issues are being discussed. And I'm very knowledgeable about social issues in my community because I am from an Aboriginal community. I'm very familiar with it. And so I'm able to make a contribution in those discussions. And obviously, I made huge contributions in these cabinet discussions because I was always, I sat on the Social Affairs Committee, which deals with all of the social issues in that mandate. And so I'm able to make a contribution. And so without knowing the particulars, if those issues were brought forward, obviously I would be able to make a contribution. Like for example, there's a couple of communities that really stand out in my mind right now when I talk about Labrador communities. One is Black Tickle, and the other one is Hopedale. Both communities always, they bother me in the sense that more needs to be done. Black Tickle, for example, is a community that does not have running water. I think they told me that they have to go to the other end of the community, and the little pond that they have sometimes is not, proper to drink, and they don't have an economic development. I was very disappointed with Black Tickle, and I'll say that up front. I offered them a meeting with the Minister of Fisheries, Keith Aspel. Keith and I agreed to, he agreed, both and I, to travel to Black Tickle. I wanted him to look at the fish plant that's there and to see what can we do to help these people in Black Tickle, because there's a community that that needs support, and it's an odd situation because it's a community that's under the province. It doesn't fall under the Indian Affairs, and yet I offered them a meeting with the Minister of Fisheries, because I was hoping that we would be able to find something for them to do as economic development in fisheries, and they turned me down. They said that they weren't available for meetings. They were on holidays, and a couple were going to the hospital, and so I was disappointed with that. But having said that, I mean, it still needs to be addressed. We need to find a way to help Black Tickle, and I know when I was there the last time, I made sure that I had conversations with Ed Martin. I said, look, you got to get people in Black Tickle the plane to be able to support them to get to Muskrat Falls to work, and he did that. And but that's going to end in a couple of years. So what are we going to do? And so I'm always, I'm concerned about that, and I'm desperately, I guess, trying to find a way to help. And another community is Hopedale. Hopedale is another community, for example, has in the winter time, you have to drive something like 30 kilometers or a couple hours to get wood, because the oil is very expensive on the north coast. And I remember at the time I was going around with Jim Tutak as going door to door in Hopedale, and we visited this elderly Inuit elder, and the place was really cold, and so I asked her, I said, why the place was really cold, and she said, I can't afford fuel and I can't afford wood because it's very expensive to and she said that her grandchildren who were normally would be supported or somewhere else, they're off in school or something. And it always stuck with me, like, we have to do something for the community. And so that's why the road for me is part of the solution, because we can get cheaper electricity to the North Coast that people can afford. And if we make sure it comes from Churchill Falls, then it'd be the same rate that we're paying here for this region. And so that's always been stuck with me. And then I was also visiting I think her name was Mary Slick, and a couple of kids came into the house and they said, my grandmother would like to know if you have any wood, and she said she didn't, and she offered them her I think it was her garbage wooden garbage box for the tear apart, so they can use it for wood. Right? It struck me as something that we need to find a resolution to. And so obviously it's something that I tell stories of when I'm in Ottawa. It's always good to share these stories to other cabinet ministers, because they can relate to helping to find solutions.
Great, well, I think we'll stop there. Doesn't mean that people have to leave. If, we'll just I'm gonna turn the equipment off, and there's stuff for tea and coffee over there and some cookies and things, so help yourself.
Yeah.
But I'd like to say thank you for coming out and being our first participant.
Thank you very
I
much.
think it went quite well. Thanks to the audience as well for having some good questions. Our next presenter in this series is on Monday at 7, and that'll be Yvonne Jones will be here on Monday at 7. So anybody who wants to come back and ask questions of Yvonne, you can, or you'll be able to watch that through the YouTube link as well. So thank you.
Are you staying?